Are we good? Andy,
Yes.
just tell me when we're live.
We're live.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. All right. Good evening and welcome to the USD290 Board of Education meeting. It is December 13th, 2021 at 7 p.m. We will call this meeting to order and start with a roll call. Linda Alderman.
Present.
Chris Cunningham.
Present.
Julie Dandrio, present. Susan Moore.
Present.
Shenda Olmsted.
Present.
Melidia Payne.
Present.
Harold Wingert. Harold will be joining us in a little while. We have 6 board members present. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
All in favor, please raise your hand. And that passes 6-0. We do have items on consent agenda. There's just one item.
I'll second that.
I'm sorry. Thank you very much. I'm just moving on through without anything. Gosh, haven't done this before, Melidia. Thank you. All right. Consent agenda tonight. We do have one item that needs mentioning, Dr. Cobbs.
Yeah, really two. I just want to thank American Eagle for a $15,000 donation to the Steam Bus project, which is a huge benefit for our kids and for our school and towards the completion of that project. And I also want to thank a couple of people, Randy Boots and Colin Anderson, who donated $1,500 total, $500 to each of our 3 elementary schools to be used in the counseling department. So thank you to Randy and Colin, as well as American Eagle, for your continued support of our schools and our students. We appreciate all of it a great deal.
Is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
So moved.
Second. Thank you. All in favor, please raise your hand. And that passes 6-0 as well. We are down to comments from the public. Parents and taxpayers of USD290 who desire to address the board on any topic related to board work are welcome to do so at this time. Speakers are requested to limit their remarks to not more than 5 minutes, to appoint a spokesperson if the concern is a group concern, and to supplement verbal presentations with written reports if necessary or desired. Public comments critical of an individual are not acceptable. Please note the board will listen to the public comment but will not respond. The board may direct the superintendent to follow up at a later date or on questions asked or concerns raised. We do have one comment this evening from Bernard Marler. Please attend to the podium. Welcome.
Thank you. Bernard Marler, 3947 Eisenhower Road. First, I'd like to, I believe 2 board members, Shanda and Linda, I wanted to thank you for your time that you spent on the board. I appreciate that. I understand sometimes it's a thankless job, so I wanted to say thank you. I did send an email, but I was able to make it in person, so I'm going to go ahead and read the email I sent. But hope you all are well. I wanted to reach out and express some concerns. I've asked repeatedly USD 290 School Board to rescind the current COVID policy and to return school back to normal. Last time I made the request, Dr. Cobbs asked me for clarification on what I'm asking for, so I wanted to clarify that with you. And I'm asking that school board stop testing for COVID and simply make masks optional for students. I believe making these inaccurate tests part of daily activities for children at school has only led to confusion of the students and intimidation by some of the teachers. Children are told that if they don't wear a mask, they're going to have to quarantine. I don't think this reality was intended by the board. However, as with many things, the board has failed to recognize this and correct it. Please allow the children to just return to being children. At this point, every man, woman, and child over 5 has been afforded the opportunity to get a vaccine. They also have the ability to go to their doctor and get an actual accurate COVID test. That said, there's no reason to continue the policy. The school needs to get out of this lane. Schools are for education, not medical clinics. Another item I believe needs addressed is the weight-based grading system. I know you guys had talked about that last meeting. I wasn't able to make it to that, but I wanted to give you my thoughts. It's caused such frustration for middle school students this year. As if students haven't had a challenging enough last few years, the school now wants to make it easier for their grades to drop and more challenging to bring their grades back up. My son that finished last year with all A's has struggled this year with a C because he's not given the opportunity to raise it back up. This lasted for months. When the kids go to their teachers and ask if they can raise their grades, they're told there's nothing they can do until the next test or quiz. Their daily assignments just don't carry enough weight. It has turned good students into struggling students, and what is being done to them will stay with them for years. It hurts their confidence, it demotivates them, and most of all, it just isn't an accurate way or an accurate depiction of their education. They can get a 90% plus on hundreds of questions asked on daily assignments, then miss 2 questions on a 5-question quiz, and be stuck with a poor grade for weeks or sometimes months. We are now halfway through the year of this failed experiment, and the process remains. I ask that you put an end to the weighting system. It isn't working and has proven to be extremely poorly timed. And when I say poorly timed, I mean we just came off of a pandemic. We asked them to learn remote learning on the fly, and then they come back to school and boom. I mean, it's literally been a slap in the face for the kids. Anyway, the other item I wanted to throw in there was you have updates for the KASB policy. I would just caution the board, you guys are an elected body, and the KASB is not. So just arbitrarily accepting policy from them, I would just caution you against that. Just remember, you guys are accountable to the electorate. So anyway, thank you for your time. Have a good night.
Thank you. All right, up next on our agenda, Dr. Cobbs is going to facilitate a discussion on board meeting dates and frequency of occurrence. I think we will take action on this tonight if the board sees fit, as we discussed last time.
Okay, so Andy, if you'd click on that for me there. So the conversation really centered around moving board meetings to a single board meeting a month with the opportunity for a work session in between. So if you look at what was proposed in the conversations that took place via board updates and from the last time we met, you can see there on that calendar that starting this January, you would see the second Thursday of each month is identified as the board meeting, which would begin formally at 7 p.m. and that the shaded times there, or the orange sections, are the ones that are identified with possible study sessions. Only those that are orange right now are the ones that we would approve as study sessions at this point, with the others being approved by our board as the need arises, but identifying them on the calendar as to when they would fall. So in essence, there's not a whole lot of change in terms of the actual number of meetings that we might have. You're coming off of 6 additional meetings, or 6 less meetings than what we have right now, but the monthly meeting remains the same within the work study sessions every other month as identified there. The work study sessions would begin at 6 o'clock. Predominantly, we push them up an hour early so that we can have some in-depth conversations. They may take a little more time than your formal board meeting because of the in-depth conversation. Subsequently, it allows us to be able to do so without going deep into the night, and still be able to get people at home at a normal time. So it also, like I said, moves it to Thursday away from Monday. Starting time 7 o'clock on the blue periods, 6 o'clock on the orange and gray periods. I think we had discussed that in January 27th, if we choose to do this, the first one would most likely be talking about capital projects and where we need to be on a 5-year capital plan or a 3-year capital plan, depending on how we wanted to look at it. And utilizing that work study session to really have some deep conversations about where our capital dollars should go, especially considering the volume of bonded projects that we've taken care of, opening up some things in terms of our capital projects. So any thoughts or questions on this? Again, I think I said in the update, if this is not the direction that the board wants to go, there doesn't need to be any action tonight. I forgot the term for it now. And if the resolution that was passed in July would remain intact. Should you want to change it, the resolution is on board docs. We'd make that resolution to subsequently change the board meetings to meet this expectation versus the one that we're currently under.
Are there any comments, or would anyone like to make a motion that we approve this resolution?
Madam President,
Yes.
I would like to make a motion that we approve this resolution.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion before we vote? All in favor, raise your hand. And that passes 6-0. And we are down to the next section, which is the E-rate bid.
And Andy, if you would click on the year 25 evaluation sheet, or the Y25 evaluation sheet, the one directly above that one, there you go. So this was the process that we went through. So this E-rate bid is based off of the wireless access points throughout the district. And this was a project that Dean started before he left. And subsequently, we need to upgrade the current wireless points in nearly all of our buildings, with the exception of Sunflower and Ottawa High School. So there were two companies that bid this project. One was Network Computer, the other was Provision Data, and you will see that the recommendation is actually for Provision Data, because Network Computer did not meet the requirements of the RFP. Ultimately, we wanted to use Aruba equipment and make sure that we maintained the same, if not similar, access points to what we have now, just simply upgrading them to meet our needs moving forward. What Network Computer provided was not Aruba equipment, nor could we be guaranteed that they were going to meet the same requirements that we had within the RFP. So ultimately, we only had one bidder across the nation that could meet our requirements, or that wanted to meet our requirements. Anybody could have met them, but wanted to meet them with that cost being $189,231. And you can see how the points scored out there in terms of making this recommendation. So what is in front of you tonight, and if Andy can click out of that and go back to the provision unsigned, this is the bid from Provision Data, and ultimately you see there the $188,670. I think the actual cost is $189 something. There are a couple of ancillary things that are listed on a different sheet, I believe. But ultimately, what this comes down to is an E-ratable purchase. So the district would be required only to pay 20% of this, which is just a little under $40,000. The reality of what we're doing tonight is that you're not making a decision as to whether we're going to purchase any of these. You're simply making the decision that we lock in this bid. So the E-rate piece of this still has to be quantified by CRW, who is our E-rate company. So they did the bid process for us. We simply determined the bid specs and whether or not they met the requirements of our bid, and which bidder we wanted to associate ourselves with. What you would approve tonight is that we would use Provision Data, and that they would contact them. Then they would go through the E-rate process to make sure that we meet all the federal guidelines of E-rate. If that is the case, then coming back in probably April or May, they will come back and say, here's the actual cost of the project, here's the bids that are associated with it, and at that point the board approves the total project. So the only thing that you would be approving tonight is that we would lock in this value for E-rate bid, and that's it.
So then it would go out to bid again? Yeah?
No. So locking in this bid would say they're the ones that now they'll go through the process of making sure that everything that's in it is E-rate equipped.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And it's been a minute since Dean told us about this, but didn't he say that this comes from like a technology fund?
Yes,
that
they would
we
come
can
from our
only
tech
spend
capital
on?
budget,
Okay.
yes. Yep.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions, or would someone like to make a motion that we approve the bid with Provision Data Solutions?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the bid with Provision Data Solutions for $188,670. All in favor, please raise your hand. And that
We need
passes.
to do that for $189,000?
Yeah, well,
What's that other number?
There's two numbers.
yeah, there was two. It should be 189.
Okay, thank you.
Just want to make sure we
Yeah,
get the
no,
right.
thank you.
I think
I
it
think
was on the first
I
document.
wrote it in the motion, yeah.
Okay, 189,670, is that correct?
Yep,
Or just
yes.
189,000?
Yep,
Which one?
189,000.
Okay, so I will change that then to say that should have been 189,000.
Yep.
All right, perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that. All right, so I believe we just voted and passed that, correct? Yep,
Correct.
all right. We are moving on to the ECHO Task Force and looking to possibly approve changes in that policy.
Okay, so the ECHO plan is is pretty cut and dry at this point. So the reason that it's in front of you now, as you've all have seen the ECHO plan, and I think we just lost this. I can't see anything behind you, so I'm gonna wing it here. The reason that we have the ECHO plan is because it changes the policies that's currently within the student handbook. So middle school and high school have differing policies regarding how they address vaping within their buildings. This would change those policies, align them, and create some optional pieces for our administrators to put in place to try to curb vaping use within the building. So if you'd scroll down there a little bit, there we go. So in essence, what happens on that first offense is that there would be a three-day in-school suspension with the opportunity to opt out of the 3-day suspension if you go through the learning protocols and the training protocols of the vaping process. So we will utilize a group, and the name is escaping me right now, of the companies that we'll work with to provide information to families and students about the dangers of vaping and so on and so forth. That's the Truth Initiative is the group that we'll utilize. They have a number of resources available for us at no cost, but ultimately some great information, again, about the dangers of vaping, what happens as people become addicted to vaping and so on and so forth. So as we go through this process, that first offense, they have the opportunity to go through that training module instead of spending their time in in-school suspension. You can then see the responses in terms of what happens when they're caught vaping in school, how it ramps up at each subsequent consequence after that. So as we continue to work with parents and continue to try to provide avenues to educate both our students and our parents about the dangers of vaping, this is the first step in that direction. The next pieces that it will identify is addressing some of those things within our health courses, our health and PE courses, and making sure that that we can do some of those things to inform, again, our students and our parents about the dangers of vaping, as well as working with our counseling staff in the process of addiction and providing avenues for parents who believe that their students are addicted to nicotine, specifically through vaping devices, and how they can utilize some of those resources to help those families provide more in-depth resources to address their addictive habits. So a lot of changes in terms of how we address vaping in our schools. Predominantly before, it was simply consequence laden. If this happens, this is the response. At this point, I think what we're trying to accomplish here is that there is still a caveat that would indicate for some of our students a reason not to do it because they don't want the consequence. But for those that have deeper issues, a means of education and trying to support them through their issues to make some better choices about whether or not they continue to vape or not vape. So that's the ECHO pilot. Again, what is in front of you is the plan that we have in place. The reason that we asked for the board approval tonight is so that we can change the policies that are currently in the student handbook.
I would like to see
Thank you.
the, I just drew a blank on what they're called, the vaping sensors for the bathrooms. We had talked about those. I didn't see them on there.
So I would just tell you that I've not spoken with a school yet that indicate that they work. They're very expensive. Lewisburg has them in their bathrooms right now. Their principal has indicated to our principal that they've done little to nothing to actually curb vaping within their building. So we continue to investigate and research what they actually do. The reality of it is the majority of them are made by the vaping companies. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense that a vaping company would create the device that would hinder its use.
That's a good point about that. I didn't realize they were made by that. But on the ECHO, the things, there were several SROs who spoke positively about them and said that they were effective.
Yeah, I don't know that SROs are that involved with the actual behavior issues that happen in schools. So predominantly our SRO would not be involved in those things. Because typically they choose not to address it as a criminal activity. And so subsequently, It's an administrative piece that we address. Whether or not SROs in other districts do so, I don't know. But we will continue to research that. If it's the right thing to do, I certainly don't. I wouldn't mind stepping in front of this board and saying, "Hey, let's do these things." I don't know that either one of our principals have spoken with their peers to indicate that they think that it is going to be a huge deterrent for our students. But we'll continue to research that and see.
Okay, so if that's not what we want to do, I think that we need to find something else to curb the behavior. I'm on board with the changing of the policy, but vaping is happening actively daily in our high school. I can start busting out stories up here if that's what we want. I don't think that's what is best, but I can. But I think that we need to do something to actually curb it and to help it be identified, because I know that our principals and teachers are busy. They have a lot of other things that they're involved with, or responsibilities. So I was thinking the sensors could help so that a human wouldn't have to always be in there. But I think if we don't want to do that, then we need to look at other avenues, because the policy is good, but if we're not actually addressing that it's happening, nothing is going to change in our school. And I know that Harold was pretty fired up. He's not here right now, but he went to the KSB conference and was talking about what they were talking about vaping there, and was talking about how much it's actually happening in schools, and it's not being. Our school is not addressing it somehow.
I would caution anybody to say that our administrators are not addressing it. I think we can show you multiple situations in which it is being addressed. I think, like with anything, students are very cautious about where they go to do things and how they try to get away with things, especially knowing that they can't do things in certain areas. It's very different than smoking, but if you remember, there was a time when there was a smoking patio out in front of Ottawa High School, and it was one of the things that they tried to curb at one point in time, and it took a number of years and a huge lawsuit against cigarette companies to actually engage in that process to minimize the impact of cigarettes on youth. That's the whole point behind this ECHO project, is recognizing that there's going to have to be a much larger systemic piece that is involved in this, that gears a level of knowledge to our students away from just, hey, it's cool to vape and look at what we can do. Part of that knowledge is understanding that, you know, the detriment of what it is, that a single vape pod is equivalent to an entire pack of cigarettes or whatever. There's some education that has to exist there. And again, if there is a deterrent, a legitimate deterrent that is available to our students and to our staff, I think we would be willing to put those things in place as quickly as possible. We have not heard from other principals, specifically in our league and those that work with our administrators, that the sensors have been a thing that has curbed it. They simply found other ways around it. And so, again, to indicate that we're not addressing it would be to indicate that we've chosen to turn the other cheek or look the other direction when we find students with vape products, or we find students vaping in school, which is certainly not the issue. The issue is that when the size of a vape is the size of a USB port, it's awfully difficult to catch on students, especially when they can do it in a matter of seconds. So it's much more difficult than that for us to address with our kids, and for us to impact them in a manner that's going to make them want to stop. A big piece of this with our kids is the social construct of what it is. It's not necessarily addiction, but there is a social construct that exists with it, and being able to identify that we're doing these things, and that's cool or uncool or however they choose to look at it. But that's something that we have to address. The policy in and of itself is not the end of the conversation for us. It's the first step in that direction. And as we continue to evolve that, we certainly want to make it to where our students are less desiring of wanting to vape at school. And it doesn't just stop at school, or wanting to not vape, period. That we curb the attachment to the device and to vaping in general. So there's still a lot of work to do here. The policy is the initial step, hopefully in the right direction. And like I said, we'll continue to research the other avenues that would ultimately curb or hinder students from doing things within our buildings. And if that is sensors in bathrooms and those types of things, we certainly want to put those in place. We also want to make sure that if we're going to spend the money to do so, that it's effective, and it's effective use of our time and effective strategy, and not just put it up there to say, hey, we've bought this and now we have this plan against it. If it doesn't diminish that action in other schools, nor would their data support that it is diminished. So there's still some research for us to do there.
Any other discussion, or would somebody like to take any action?
I think this is a good step in the right direction. I would just hope that if something arises that we see as another tool to use as a deterrent, that we sign up for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How does out-of-school suspension keep them from vaping?
It doesn't. I will tell you that there's so much to this. Many of our parents whose kids are caught vaping have conversations with us about the issues at hand. Many of them will tell us up front that it's not our responsibility to tell their kids that they can't vape, that they're just fine with them vaping. They use their vapes, they buy their vapes, and if they want to vape, they're going to vape. There isn't a whole lot that we can do to address that mentality. There's also a large faction of parents whose students are taking their vapes, and when we have conversations with them, the attitude persists that is more likely to be angry that they have to come get their vape than their kids actually were vaping in school. And more often than not, what they want is they just want their vape back. Yeah, I'm upset about my kid vaping, but can I come get my vape device, my vape pen, my whatevers? And again, those are conversations that we have with parents. When we out of school suspend kids, the hope that you get is that the threat of out of school suspension becomes a deterrent to action or behavior. For many of our students, it is. For the vast majority of students, it is. Just like a speed limit and the threat of a ticket on the interstate is a deterrent for most people to obey traffic laws appropriately, or to not speed, or whatever it happens to be. For those that want to vape, getting out of school suspended is probably not a huge issue. And the reality of it is that if we out of school suspend a kid, they're probably more than likely to sit at home and continue to do this. And that's a piece of it. But I'm not sure that that's vastly different than being out of school suspended for any other reason. And schools, for the most part, are left with very few options in terms of providing discipline to kids. You really are left with detention, in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension. There was a time when you could do some different things. We saw Friday night school was appropriate there for a long time. We're seeing more and more pushback against those types of things. You're seeing more and more pushback against. There was a time when we had community service as part of that, and again, there's been more and more pushback against those types of things. So it is a piece that schools have to use. It's certainly not a deterrent for everybody. If it was, wouldn't have any behavior problems.
Anyone else? Would anyone like to take action on moving this policy forward?
By moving this policy forward, is it only changing, are we approving everything that's on here or is it just the language for the handbook?
No, it would approve everything that's on there, including how it impacts the handbook. What it doesn't approve is that this is the end of the process. And so this is just the piece that we would put in place at this point to begin to address vaping within our buildings and have some consistency across the board 6 through 12. So the other pieces that we talk about, whether it be looking at sensors in bathrooms or implementing other pieces, those can still come and will come, and we'll continue to bring those to the board. This is simply about consequences that occur within the school day for students who are caught vaping either at school, on school grounds, or at school activities, and that we will push this narrative into our counseling departments as well as our PE and health programs to make sure that we're informing kids of the detriments of vaping and nicotine.
So this is just a starting point, not a final step?
Yes.
Okay.
Does this make vaping, I'm unfamiliar with our like tobacco and drug
Yep.
policy
So
or alcohol or
it
those-
makes it consistent with tobacco, although we don't have an opt-out for tobacco in terms of a education piece. But it does make it consistent. If you get caught with chewing tobacco or cigarettes in school, then the consequences 1 through 4 would be the same. Those things would now be the same across the board. In terms of drugs, our drug policies are much different. You bring drugs to school, you're going to be out for a number of days, for 10 days, with a conversation about whether or not you're allowed to return back to school.
Because it's illegal.
Well, vaping is illegal under 18 as well.
I would tell you, I don't know that most of our police officers would address it that way. I can't speak on their behalf, but I have never seen one of our students arrested for tobacco products in our schools.
Have we invited Chief Weingartner to be in on this process and what would be best for our schools?
We have not.
If not, have we included the SRO in any of?
She was not included, no.
Is there any interest in approving this policy as a starting point, or do we need some more time?
Madam President, I'm okay with this as a starting point, just knowing that it is just that, a starting point, and that we are going to try to expand on it from here.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand. That passes 6-0.
Thank you.
We are down to reports and presentations. We do have the KSB policy update, and we all have had lots of time to take a look at these and kind of dig in a little bit. There aren't a whole lot of changes. I guess I would ask if there's any specific questions from the board before Dr. Cobbs maybe goes over just a few of the more pertinent ones that have come up. Do you have any specific questions? They were pretty straightforward. Dr. Cobbs, are there any specific ones you want to point out to us?
No, I think the reality of it is most of our policies are pretty sound as they are. This just updates a couple of things from KASB attorneys that we probably need to be aware of. Most of them are commonsensical things that I think that we would apply anyways. They're just now written into the policy that associates with them and is governed. I think that there are some things that you see in there, and you specifically see in GAAP and there was another one, JBCB. This is specific to dealing with the Department of Children and Families, working with families in crisis and providing intervention hotline information for them. I think maybe the one that is most important is JCDB, which indicates and protects certain members of tribes and different groups that schools cannot prohibit traditional tribal regalia. Again, this is predominantly a graduation thing, that if their culture persists in a certain way, that these things would typically be allowed or provided in those areas, that the school cannot step in and say, no, you're not wearing those things to graduation or to prom or whatever it happens to be, that they would continue to be allowed. And the rest of them are pretty simple, indicating that that staff can't use the property of the district for their own personal gain. That seems to be pretty cut and dry. That you cannot purchase personal items through our district accounts. Again, these things are pretty cut and dry. They're policies and practices that we have worked under, but they are not specifically written into our policies, which would now provide for that. So, rest of them are mostly verbiage issues.
Any questions or discussion on this? We won't take any action tonight, but are we good to move on?
Yes.
All right. We are down to board reports. Have any board members had any meetings or functions where they were represented the board at that function? Okay. Anything going on? Okay. Welcome, Harold.
Thank you.
We're now a party of 7 up here. All right, on to 6.03.
Okay.
Props.
We have some gifts for our two parting members. So I wanted to share these with you all. Choose not to open them up until now. This one is to Shanda. I'll leave the little gavel in the deal. We wanted to thank you for 4 years of service to our district and to our students. Appreciate you a great deal. There's a little plaque in recognition of your service to our district. And again, can't thank you enough for all that you've done with our kids.
Thank you. It's been a great time.
And for Linda, who has given 40 some odd years of your life to USD290, most of it right here in this building, certainly with me as a first grader, right up there in our office, and I think 8 years on the board now?
Mm-hmm.
8 years on the board. Same to you and your little gavels in the
Oh,
box.
thank you.
But I
Thank
appreciate you very much. Thank you for all that you've done, your service to the board and to our
Thank
community.
you.
It means a great deal to us. And certainly, if anybody else, as Linda and Shanda leave us with their last meeting tonight, if anybody else has thoughts or well wishes for Linda and Shanda, certainly open it up to you.
Thank you.
Certainly appreciate all you've done, all you've contributed. So thank you for your service.
Thank you, Harold.
We've appreciated your perspective on our children in this district and also in doing the right thing for staff. Appreciated how much time you put in on negotiations and all the work that you've done to represent us so well. We are not a one-way communication situation here, so please don't be strangers. Let us know what's going on and keep us informed, for sure.
We can always come back for comments at the beginning of the meeting.
Happy to provide
5
you
minutes.
with your time. And thank you so much for all that you've done and for keeping kids first in all your decisions. Absolutely, and always having an open mind. Thank you, appreciate it. I appreciate all your time that you've put in.
Well, this has been a remarkable 8 years, actually, considering what all has gone on in this district, from a $63 million bond issue to buildings and wonderful sports facilities and career and tech ed and what we've done in curriculum for kids. It has really been wonderful for our district and for our kids and for our community. And I'm honored to have been part of that, a little bitty part of it. And so it's been fun, actually. I'll miss it.
And I will second that. And for all the navigation through COVID. I mean, you guys have been creative, amazing. It's been a heck of a ride the last 2 years, year and a
Yeah.
half.
That it has.
But I also want to commend our administrators from district office to the buildings and our teachers for putting in yeoman's work during especially this COVID period. We have a great group of people that work in this district, and we should honor that.
All right.
I think it is important to note, and Susan is certainly the elder statesman of the group
The
at
oldest.
at
Thank you.
16 years, I think. I think Susan could probably say better than anybody the dramatic changes that have existed and as the function of this board from 16 years ago to today, and the things that we've seen over the course of time, from teachers stacking contracts and threatening to walk out of the district, to the point where our community passed a $64 million bond issue because they trusted our board and because they trusted our district to do great things with it, to a time when we had little to no documentation of the curricular resources used throughout our district, to the point where we have a very clear and concise access to our resources and documentation of our resources, and creating an expectation, a level of minimum requirements or minimum achievement for our students, and being able to say that we're going to reach it, right? And then be able to move beyond that. That 10 years ago, we had a 70% graduation rate at our high school, and a year ago, we were over 90%. The growth of our district has been enormous, and a big piece of that has been this board and the members of our board over the last 8 to 12 years, really making a dramatic change in how we operate and supporting great teachers doing what they're doing, being great members of our community and supporting our schools and listening to people who may have ideas or thoughts on how we can do that better, and providing an avenue for us as district employees to make this a destination place for teachers and a great place for students. This board has been incredible to work with. I will miss Shanda and Linda a great deal. You guys have been awesome board members. And we have two really great ones that are going to come in and continue this path and continue to push for the achievement of our kids and the growth of our kids, and continue to see this growth of our district overall, to meet the goals that we set forth in our strategic plan, and to make sure that we can all walk out of here and say we accomplished our task and we did everything that we set out to do. So again, to all of you, all 7 of you, I very much appreciate the opportunity to do this job and watch our district grow, and have been able to watch it grow for the last 21 years and see all of the amazing things that we've done, the good and the bad, and to know that as we begin to rise out of what has been this pandemic, that we're going to meet those goals here in the very short future, and we're going to have great celebrations of our students and staff for all the work that they've accomplished and the hard work that they have yet ahead of them. So Linda and Shanda and all of our board, thank you very much.
Well, I said this last time, and I truly, truly mean it, and that is, as a board, it helps us make good decisions when we listen to the professionals that we have hired, and I think that's good advice.
All right, thank you. We are moving down to personnel report. You've all been provided a personnel report. Would someone like to make the motion that we approve tonight's personnel report?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand. And that passes 7-0. And we are down to announcements.
Don't really have any announcements. A couple of things. We have new board member training on Thursday. I saw Kelly here earlier. I think she's started already on hers. Had some digital stuff that she was able to do. So hopefully that has gone well. We'll reach out to her here maybe at the end of this and see how it's gone. But then on Thursday, Glendy and I will be in Topeka going through board training. Last day of school is on Tuesday, which will be really nice as we approach the end of the semester and get ready for a much-needed break. But if you've gone to any of the performances of the PAC at our elementaries, they've been awesome, and what an amazing place for our elementary kids to be able to perform. So we very much, again, thank our board, thank our community for giving us the Performing Arts Center, allowing us to do the things there that we do. It's been an amazing place, an amazing event space. And again, as we see more and more of these things happening, we'll utilize that space
One on Thursday.
even more. So
One on
pretty
Thursday.
awesome.
Elementary,
Yeah.
Wednesday, or
Lincoln.
Thursday, middle school's Wednesday.
Yep.
High
It's
school's
Which school?
Tuesday.
Lincoln?
Lincoln third grade.
it's been awesome and really an incredible space for our kids to perform. It's been phenomenal.
It's always exciting to go and be there when people come in that have never been in
Yep.
the pack. They are so impressed by that space.
It's pretty awesome when they walk in and they just look up,
Yeah.
right? Because, I mean, that's where your eyes are drawn to, and you just start looking up and you kind of take it all in. It is truly an amazing space,
It's beautiful.
and one that our kids love.
Yes.
Absolutely love. So, again, thank you, and thank you to our community for letting us have it.
So much different than those yellow seats at OMA.
You know, I was in the Ottawa Memorial Auditorium the other day, and I was there at a meeting with Case, and I told him, I said, man, I'm glad we have the Performing Arts Center. Nothing against the Ottawa Memorial Auditorium. Great space, and has been a great landmark in our community for years and years and years, and will continue to be. But the PAC is pretty special.
Yep.
It's pretty special. So that's all I got.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
So move.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand. And that passes 7-0.
Thank you, everybody.
Turn these in tonight?